afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us for Glassdoor's webinar today on how to battle bad reviews. My name is Mallory Brown, and here's a nice little picture of me so you can put a face to the name. I am an associate marketing manager here at Glassdoor, and I work in programs. So what that means is my entire job is to create resources, like today's webinar, for instance, for employers such as yourselves to really help companies understand how they can leverage Glassdoor as not only a branding tool, but as a recruiting tool as well. So before we get started today, just a couple of house cleaning tips for you attendees. You can connect to audio in one of two ways. So you can either select use microphone and speakers and connect through your computer, or you can actually choose to dial in through your telephone as well. I'm going to mute all the background lines just to make sure there's no distracting background noise, but if you do have a question, please feel free to enter it into the questions pane over here. For the sake of everyone's time, I'm going to save any questions we get for the end, time allowing. And just before I begin, I'd like to note to all of you guys on the line, you will receive a copy of today's presentation in the form of the slides, as well as the recording of today's webinar. So please look out for an email from my marketing team in the next 24 hours or so. So let's dive right in. Today's agenda is we're going to talk a little bit about why you should respond. What is the benefit to you as an employer? Next, I'm going to address who can actually respond. So we get a ton of questions at Glassdoor around this. So I'll take a couple of minutes to just clarify who can actually respond to feedback on your company profile and how you can get access to doing so if you don't have it already. Lastly, I will share 3 easy ways that you can get started monitoring and responding to reviews. And I'll also share some examples of companies that are approaching this really well. All right. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is why responding matters. What is the benefit to you as a company? And really this comes down to the fact that decision-making has changed in all realms of life today. So even for relatively insignificant decisions, like what kind of blender I want to buy, for instance, I'm going to do a ton of research first. So I'll go online. We're all going online to do research. We're looking at Google. We're consulting Amazon reviews to find out what that blender's like and what other people think of it. If I'm going to go on vacation, I may consult with TripAdvisor. So we see that about 7 out of 10 people are seeking out reviews before making a consumer purchase, and we're seeing the same behavior reflected in job seekers today. So think about the kind of research you would want to do before making an incredibly important life decision, such as where you're going to work. We see on average that job seekers are consulting 18 sources before applying to a job, so they're really doing their research. And this issue of trust, as I said, this is relevant not only to consumers and employees and job seekers, it's people everywhere. People want transparency. They want an inside look, and we all lean on peer advice today when we're making decisions. And this is really nothing new. We've lived in this reviews culture for a long time. And just like the companies you see here on this slide, Glassdoor is really seeking to empower people through information transparency. So it makes sense, it's no surprise that people are relying on this sort of peer advice when they're making decisions as important as where they're going to spend the majority of their time. And this feedback that's taking place on your Glassdoor profile is happening whether or not you're actively engaged in the conversation. So I really urge you to get involved, and that's why we're here today, right? Employees and candidates are constantly evaluating you and trying to understand if you're the best choice for them. So it's going to affect not only your ability to hire new talent, but retain the talent you already have. And I want to stress that candidates and employees, they don't demand perfection. What they do expect is a level of authenticity and transparency. and they want to hear from real people working at your company, which is why they're coming to Glassdoor. And friends and family, still number one as far as who is the most trusted source of information about a company. If you know somebody personally that works there, you're probably going to reach out to them first. But content provided by employees is number two as far as the most trusted source, according to Edelman Trust Barometer. So if you are an already established large company, why does this matter to your talent retention and attraction strategy? Well, one reason is this is an employee engagement tool. This is a great way to help your current employees feel more valued and heard by responding to that feedback. It's also going to help you continue to attract the right candidates in this highly competitive market. So if you are taking a look at some of your competitors and you're seeing that they're not responding to feedback, that's a huge win for you. And if you're a smaller, fast-growing company, if you're just kind of getting started out with this is your chance to start building your brand and kind of get ahead of it. So you can have a say in the way that this conversation plays out early on. So the other piece of this that I want to stress to you all is, this stuff extends beyond just your employer brand. We know that consumers today really want to buy from companies that they trust. And partners, investors, are likely consulting this information too. So as you can see, Edelman did a really interesting study, and they found that 63% of consumers actually will not buy products or services from a company they don't trust. Conversely, 80% of consumers will choose to buy from companies that they do trust. And furthermore, they will recommend those companies to others. So the potential here for building brand ambassadors is exponential. I want you to think about responding to someone's feedback can not only, potentially make that one singular individual feel heard and more valued and up their engagement with your brand, but the impacts of this can reach even further. So think about the hundreds, potentially thousands of eyeballs on this. Hopefully you'll win the war in, kind of helping that one employee feel better about working at your company and more engaged. But the other side of that is you will prove to so many other people what kind of company you are. You are open, you are transparent, and you care about feedback from your employees, and that's huge. And the good news for you as employers is that people really care about your perspective too. So I want you to understand that it's not just the employee voice that matters. 70% of people are looking at reviews before making decisions, but 9 out of 10 job seekers still find your perspective as the employer useful. So if you are responding to this feedback, you're speaking to 9 out of 10 job seekers in that moment. And in fact, we know that 62% say their perception of a company will improve after they see that an employer has responded to a review. So if you're moving toward this kind of organizational transparency, you're going to foster an environment that is trustworthy and that speaks volumes about what kind of employer you are. So now that I've covered a little bit about, why responding really matters, let's talk about who at your company is actually able to respond. And again, this is a big question we get, so just want to clarify briefly for you all that before we can grant an employer the ability to respond to reviews on your company page, first we have to verify that whomever is responding is a legitimate representative of your company, which makes sense. And the first step in that is, if you're not already a client of Glassdoor's, you're going to want to apply for a free employer account. Emphasis on the free. This is an entirely free profile that you can claim and you can take ownership of. And I'll cover what you can do with your free account in more depth in just a second, but basically you need to ask yourself, if you're applying for this, are you in a position to speak on behalf of your company? For example, are you an executive? Are you in human resources? Are you a member of PR, marketing, or operations? Those are typically the titles that we grant access to, so just keep that in mind as you go to unlock access to your free employer account. And I want to note that those applications are reviewed by our content and community team prior to approval, and this process can take up to about 2 business days. So bear with us as we review that. And once you've been approved, you will receive an email with your login information, and you can get started responding to reviews, among other things. So if you are looking to go ahead and unlock your free employer account, there are 2 ways you can do that. You can either visit glassdoor.com/employers and fill out this form here that you see. It's just a brief form. The second way you can do it is you can actually go onto your company page, and there should be a button on the right upper hand side, and it says Unlock Profile. So right here, you want to click that, and that'll take you to the same form that you will fill out. So once you have access to that, you can provide your official employer response to any company review, interview review, or benefit review that's posted to your company page. And just to briefly go over what else you can do with your account, something that's really cool is if you're just getting started, you can set up company alerts that notify you anytime an employee or an interview candidate posts content to your page. So that's a nice way to kind of stay on top of what's going on with your reviews. You can also invite your colleagues to respond. So once you've been granted access, you can, kind of loop in others on your team that are going to help you maybe divide and conquer the work. You can also flag reviews. If you feel that a review does not meet our community guidelines, you can flag it and it will go back into our review process. So a couple of the cool things you can do. You can also access some analytics on the back end and a couple of other things. But for the purpose of this conversation, that's kind of what you need to know about your free employer account. All right, so on to the good stuff. So I'm going to share our Glassdoor kind of best tips for how we recommend you start monitoring and responding to reviews. So I can't stress this enough. You need to have a strategy going into this process. I promise you it will make it a lot less stressful and a lot less work. So what that is going to look like is, first of all, you need to determine what your brand voice is. So what I mean by that is, what is the tone of voice you're going to use? How are you going to position your brand in these responses so that it's consistent with the rest of your branding? Oftentimes marketers have a really clean grasp of this. So if you have the option, you may want to go ahead and enlist the help of your marketing team to help you map that out. I know here at Glassdoor, that's something that our HR team has done. They've consulted with our marketing org to kind of develop our strategy because, yes, Glassdoor does have a Glassdoor page where we get employee reviews as well. Okay, the second piece of advice I have for you around setting guidelines is, as a leadership team, you need to kind of determine what your criteria are for responding. And a kind of a good tip that I'd like to offer you is any reviews that are marked as helpful are more likely to be seen by others. So that should give you kind of an idea of what will give you a bigger bang for your buck in terms of how many eyeballs are going to see your response. So keep that in mind. And you might want to develop some sort of rubric for how you prioritize responses. I'm actually going to give you a real-world example of how Uber does this in just a minute. All right, third, this is so crucial. You need to address criticism in a non-defensive voice. So just keep in mind that other employees, job seekers, and even investors, they may be reading your response, and you're speaking on behalf of your entire company. So Diplomacy, diplomacy, diplomacy. Please keep this in mind. It goes a long way. You know, kind of rule of thumb, think the positives and acknowledge the negatives. Oftentimes I find that people are really looking for acknowledgement. So again, they're not demanding this perfect company. They want acknowledgement that there are issues and some transparency into either why things are the way they are or what is being done to fix them. So I really urge you to acknowledge concerns in this non-defensive manner. It's definitely a best practice that we've observed works really well for many people doing this. And if you do believe that a poster was out of line, others will come to the same conclusion. So use this as an opportunity to prove what a gracious employer you are. You have the final say as the employer. Once you respond, that individual cannot reply back. So make it count. And again, you can flag reviews if you believe they do not meet our community guidelines. And we're always happy to take a second look. Another tip I'd like just to offer that you might want to incorporate into your strategy is for things that are urgent, you want to offer an outlet for that employee to go directly to your HR team to receive support. So try to take that conversation offline if it's something really urgent. So this is an example of how Uber, a fantastic customer of ours, has really taken the power of reviews to heart, and they've developed their own rubric for prioritizing responses. Kind of realizing that this was really important to their talent retention and attraction strategy, they decided they wanted to have a really proactive approach to responding to reviews. I believe they respond to all, if not the majority of them. So they developed this to kind of help them determine how to go about that process. So they suggest that, you know, if you don't have bandwidth to answer every review, this can really help guide your way. So for instance, if a review contains an actionable item that is super sensitive in nature, you want to offer a way to take that conversation offline and onto the appropriate channel. So this is definitely a great way to kind of start mapping out your strategy with your team. Okay, the second tip I have for you is determining responsibility. We have people from PR and legal and marketing and HR and recruiting, all kind of somewhat involved in this. So it's really important to early on kind of set the precedent for who needs to be involved, who wants to kind of own this. Can we divide and conquer this among different job groups? Like, this conversation needs to happen very early on in order for you to manage this properly. So if you're a larger organization, it really might take a team. And I know that Home Depot, we've spoken with them before on this topic, and they actually have a pretty unique and I think really great model for how to approach responses if you are a large organization. But okay, so let's just decide who's going to respond. Are you going to have marketing and PR own this? Is it HR? Is it recruiting? Can we have members from each of those job groups kind of come together to own this? Please know that anybody who is responding to reviews as an employer representative will have their title appear next to that response. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to address by function, we at Glassdoor actually do that. So our HR and recruiting team monitors and delegates to leaders of teams to respond to reviews that are relevant to them. So for instance, I'm on the marketing team, and if a review comes in that is about the marketing org, we have a leader from the marketing org actually reply. The second piece of this is you need to develop what is your cadence for monitoring. Are you going to be paying attention to this on a daily basis? Is this a weekly check-in? I definitely recommend doing it at least weekly, if not more often, if you are getting a regular flow of reviews. And it might be a good idea to actually create a schedule and log it on your calendar to remind you. It's easy to let this stuff go. I understand we're all, juggling a million balls in the air. So definitely put this on your calendar, and it will help you stay on top of it. And if you are a larger company, you might want to consider creating some curated templates. I would never suggest that you use a kind of one blanket statement to reply to reviews. I think that sends a really negative message. What I do recommend, though, is coming up with some templates that you can tweak and add to kind of help ensure that your voice and brand is consistent and help you streamline that process. So I mentioned earlier that Home Depot is a great example of kind of a mammoth organization that's doing this. And Jaquise Brown from Home Depot told me, they strive to reply to 90% of reviews, which is huge. So it is doable. And what they've actually done is they've gone ahead and created a social media ambassador team. And this is a combination of individuals from HR, from marketing, and from recruiting. And they partner with an external agency that helps kind of monitor reviews, curate responses, and prioritize which are most urgent to reply to. And they do get some support from PR and legal as needed, but really this is how they've organized themselves to be able to tackle responding to reviews. Of prioritizing reviews based on an agreed upon kind of rubric, and they use a Google Doc or some sort of shared document to kind of do that together. And they prioritize based on the urgency of the concern, of course, for them. And then their social media ambassador team, right, that group of HR, marketing, and PR individuals that I mentioned earlier, they go in and they approve responses that have been curated by that agency team. So if a review, for instance, is coming from a current associate, the agency and the social media ambassador team will kind of work together to direct that person to the right internal resources that can provide additional support. So this is a really fantastic example of one of our clients that really and doing it well. So I encourage you to check them out as well as Uber if you're interested in learning more about their strategy. Okay, so implementing the feedback loop. I cannot stress this enough. This is my favorite tip. This is actionable insight into what's working or what needs work within your organization. So it's really important to not just kind of let all of this great info go into a silo. You want to develop a process to share that feedback internally. So if you have super aggressive hiring goals, your recruiting team and your hiring team, your hiring managers, they need to be aware of what kind of interview reviews you're getting. So if you're just responding to these reviews and you're doing damage control, but those nuggets of information are never making it back to the people that can control that experience, it's a lost learning lesson. So I really say that you need to use this feedback to refine your internal processes, and you can use it to inform what kind of engagement programs you build. I would also suggest that you find a way to acknowledge the feedback that you're getting on Glassdoor in an internal public way. So for instance, if you have an all-hands meeting or something of that nature, you can kind of say to your people in that public forum that you've been getting reviews on ABC, that you hear them, and this is what's being done. So really important to acknowledge this stuff on Glassdoor and internally to make sure people understand that they're being heard. All right, so this last pro tip that I want to offer for those of you who are Glassdoor clients is that you actually have access to some really fantastic analytics that are built into your Employer Center. If you haven't already checked them out, you have these pretty nifty word clouds that you see here. This is an example. And And this can help you tap into some trends about what's going on so that you don't have to kind of pour through each one individually. And you can categorize reviews from employees versus interviewees. And you can actually click into these words to see the reviews that specifically mention those key themes, which is pretty cool. You can also filter your reviews and kind of splice them in different ways to give you more granular insight into what's going on. So you can filter by department, location, by date range, by rating, by the ones that are voted most popular or helpful. And that way you can kind of see, are we having an issue within a specific job group? Is it a problem we're having at a satellite office? Really helpful stuff to know. And you can actually download a lot of this information so you can easily share it with your teams. So at this time, I'm going to open it up to questions. I've been getting a ton throughout the last 25 minutes, so give me 1 second to just sort through a couple and I will get going. Okay, so I got a question from Jenny. Jenny, thanks for your question. She asked, can there be more than one position representative for a company? So like I mentioned earlier, if you've claimed your free employer account, you can actually invite other colleagues to get access. So yes, you can. The key there, though, is you need to have your free employer account before you can get access and before you can grant access to others. Thank you for asking. Lots of questions about whether or not you guys will receive the slides and recording, and the answer is yes. Please look out for an email from my marketing team in the next 24 hours. It will include not only the slides, but the recording of today's session, so you can watch it again or share it with your colleagues. Okay, Caitlin asked an excellent question. She said, do you feel HR or marketing/PR should respond to reviews? That's a tough one, Caitlin. I think it really depends on the size of your organization. I think for smaller companies, which I've worked for, I've been a marketer at a smaller company where I was kind of wearing a million hats. I think for those companies, sometimes it is going to be a marketer. If there's no dedicated, HR team that can kind of own that, I oftentimes do see marketers taking on that role. I think at larger organizations, it's oftentimes a combination, and it's really good to have, kind of both job groups involved because it can benefit everyone. That information is really important to your consumer brand as well as your employer brand. So, if you want to connect with me after today, we can talk in more depth about your specific company. But yeah, I think it really depends on the size of your company most, and then kind of the structure of your teams from there. Okay, Lawrence, funny question. Is there any research on whether it matters how quickly you respond within a certain amount of time, or is responding super quick effective or just creepy? Lawrence, I would say, especially in this world of instant gratification and technology, I would say responding quickly is not creepy. I think the faster you can respond, the better. I don't have any particular research around this to share with you, but just anecdotally from what I've seen, I think the quicker you can reply and address those concerns, I think the better. I will say that if you are kind of feeling a little heated in the moment, I would sleep on it and wait to respond till the next day. You don't want your emotions to get in the way. Again, you need to address any constructive feedback in a non-defensive tone. So yeah, I would say respond as quickly as you can. Again, my recommendation is, you need to be checking your reviews on a weekly cadence if you are getting them regularly. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful to you. And again, connect with me offline if you'd like to learn more. All right, we've got time for one more question. Bear with me as I sort through. Okay, I'm getting a couple of questions about like reviews that were potentially posted to the wrong profile. If you do see, if you do think that a review has been falsely posted to your profile, again, what you can do is you can flag that review. So next to the review, there's a little flag icon. So click on that. And that's kind of the way you can alert our content and community team to what's going on. You can also email content@glassdoor.com and address your concern with them that way. Hopefully that helps. It looks like we are all out of time. Thank you so much to everybody who joined today. We will be doing this webinar on a monthly basis, so please feel free to invite your colleagues if you'd like them to join me live next month. And everybody enjoy your day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.